Every night, my deceased wife would rise from her grave and teach our child the Quran. To be honest, I couldn't bring myself to believe it, until I saw with my own eyes that only a week after her death, our son had stopped crying. The boy who used to cry for his mother all day now sat quietly, staring at the sky. One night I asked him, "What's wrong, son? Why aren't you saying anything?" He whispered, "Abu, isn't Ami coming tonight?" I gently placed my hand on his head and said, "No, son, Ami has gone to Jannah." He paused for a moment, then calmly said, "What are you saying? Last night Ami helped me memorize the first page of Surah Yaseen." Saying that, my son Huzaifa fluently and flawlessly recited the beginning of Surah Yaseen. I bit my lip and stayed silent, because I had never taught him that surah, and my wife, who passed away a week ago, hadn't either. I shivered. Before I could respond, my son said, "Last night Ami came. She sat by the window and taught me the first part of Surah Yaseen." Still, I told myself this was just a grieving child's imagination. Maybe he was thinking so much about his mother that he imagined it all. To be honest, no matter how much I tried to rationalize, I couldn't shake the memory of her lips slightly moving as I lowered her body into the grave. It felt like she was trying to say something. I convinced myself it was a vision brought on by grief. After all, I saw her take her last breath with my own eyes. I gave her the ritual bath, wrapped her in the shroud, and placed her in the grave, yet that final moment, her lips moving, keeps replaying in my heart. Huzaifa memorizing Surah Yaseen and seeing his mother every night, could this be a divine sign? I kept wondering. Let me tell you more. My wife had memorized the Quran as a child. She wore hijab, never missed a single prayer. I didn't marry her for love, but because of her piety. Her father was a devout, saintly man. He stood firm against all falsehoods. Since childhood, he used to say to my wife, "One day you will become a great scholar of the Quran." After she came into my life, I realized that a woman who loves the Quran also knows how to love deeply. Our household was very simple, but there was no unrest in it. Our only son, Huzaifa, is 8 years old. Huzaifa was a bit different. He could memorize Quranic verses very quickly. Hafiza often said, "This child's heart is pure enough to hold the words of Allah." I often heard her say, "If I lived a little longer, I would have made him a Hafiz with my own hands." Those words used to strike deep in my heart, but I never thought they would become reality. She didn't live long. Hafiza passed away suddenly. Mild headache in the morning, one episode of vomiting in the afternoon, and before sunset she took her last breath. The doctor said it could have been a neurotoxin reaction in the body. Since she passed away at my in-laws' house, they didn't want to take it seriously. I saw some unfamiliar women urging that her funeral and burial be arranged quickly. According to them, if the police learned about the neurotoxin reaction, they would demand an autopsy and the dignity of a Hafiza would be compromised. No one can live beyond their destined time, they said, so bury her quickly. But in my heart, I wondered, she never ate outside food. She always ate home-cooked meals. So had something truly happened to her that was being hidden from me? Believe me, after such thoughts, strange events began to unfold in my life. After Hafiz's death, for the first few days, Huzaifa cried day and night. He would lie in bed at night and sob, asking again and again, "Abu, where did Ami go? Who will read the Quran with me now?" I would cradle him to sleep. The warmth of his breath pressed against my chest would tear my heart apart. Tears would come to my eyes, but I would hide them. But then something astonishing happened. My little son, Huzaifa, while reciting the first page of Surah Yaseen, said, "Abu, Ammi came yesterday too and taught me the first page. Why didn't she come today?" Believe me, from that night onward, strange things started happening. Around 2 a.m., the sound of Quranic recitation would come from Huzaifa's room. A beautiful, clear, female voice, just like Hafiza's. I would stand by the door. Huzaifa would be reciting with his eyes closed, Yasin, wal Qur'an Hakim. And beside him, it felt like someone was guiding him, someone I couldn't see. As soon as I opened the door, the voice would stop. The room would be empty, only Huzaifa lying on the bed. He would open his eyes and say, "Abu, why did you come? Ammi just left." A twisting pain struck inside my chest again. Grief for my wife and fear of the unseen world, everything became overwhelming. The next morning I took out an old phone, turned on the camera, and placed it facing the window. After recording the entire night, I woke up and started reviewing the footage. I kept fast-forwarding parts. At 2:17 a.m., a faint, misty shadow appeared near the window. Slowly, it took the shape of a woman. The face wasn't clear, but I felt certain it looked like Hafiza. Within a few days, Huzaifa memorized a new surah. After Surah Yaseen, it was Surah Dukhan. One day, he said to me, "Abu, do you know what Ammi said? Last night, Ammi told me that Surah Dukhan saves us from the torment of the grave. It even saved her." I was stunned. I knew I never taught him that surah. At that moment, I realized my son and I are no longer alone in this house. My wife's soul returns from the grave every night to complete our son's Quran education. But the beautiful moments with his mother from the world of souls slowly turned dark. Then began Huzaifa's nightmares. Every night he would whisper and cry in his sleep. I thought perhaps the burden on his little heart was too much. Losing a mother at that age isn't normal for any child. One night, in a half-sleep state, I stood by Huzaifa's bed. Suddenly, he began to whisper, "Abu, Abu, look, Ammi is crying." I was startled. He was whispering with his eyes closed, tears at the corners of his eyes. He said, "Ammi, why are you crying? Abu, look, someone has tied Ammi up. She can't get out." My blood ran cold. I woke him up, sprinkled water on his forehead. Huzaifa woke up and hugged me tightly. Crying, he said, "Ammi used to come every day to teach the Quran, but tonight she said she can't come anymore. Someone is stopping her." I was speechless. Something struck deep inside me. Could it be that my wife is still suffering in the grave? I started recalling that night at the cemetery again. The final moment when I placed her body in the grave. I had seen her lips move beneath the shroud. They were whispering, as if pleading to say something. I had thought it was just my imagination. But now, hearing everything from my child and witnessing these events, I no longer think it's fantasy. The next day, I went to the cemetery. I looked for the old gravedigger uncle. He knows me well. He's overseen many burials in our area. He sits beside the mosque, a simple, kind man in a cap, beard, and traditional clothes. I approached him and said, "Uncle, if I come to look at Hafiza's grave one night, would you mind?" He looked at my face for a while. Then he said, "Do you know, 3 people have come to me about this grave so far. All of them said they heard sounds at night. Some heard crying, some heard strange words, and some heard Quranic recitation, but no one had the courage to go close." I was stunned. Before I could say anything, the uncle added, "Remember one thing, son. When someone is tormented in their grave, they don't rest in peace. Sometimes that torment echoes through their soul in such a way that it manifests in the physical world. Only the eyes of true believers and the hearts of innocent children can feel it." I sat down silently. My mind was spinning with what Huzaifa had said. How he cried last night, saying, "Ammi is crying." Could it really be that my beloved wife came to tell me something? Was she only coming to teach Huzaifa the Quran, or did she want to deliver a message to me? I decided I would go to the graveyard that night, but not alone. I would take a small camera, a recorder, and a copy of Surah Yaseen, so that I could read from it if needed. My heart whispered, maybe Hafiza's soul wants to say something. Maybe she seeks peace. 2:04 a.m. I walked through the graveyard. Complete silence all around. Soft moonlight above, and a chilly breeze brushing against my skin. I stood beside Hafiza's grave. Just then, I heard a faint sound, like someone sobbing, coming from near the grave. I stepped forward, placed my hand on the grave, and at that exact moment, I heard a whispering voice. "Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr." "O Allah, I seek refuge in you from the punishment of the grave." Subhanallah. How clearly the supplication echoed. I took a deep breath. It felt as though I was imagining the words. But no, I was hearing them with my own ears. It was my wife's voice, exactly as she used to say in her supplications after every prayer. I know the next part may be hard for you to believe, because I myself couldn't believe it at first. When I first listened to the recorded audio from the graveyard, you see, that night I had left a recorder behind, along with a copy of Surah Yaseen, which I covered with soil above the grave and returned home. I couldn't sleep a single moment that night. The whispered dua kept echoing in my ears. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr. The next morning, I returned to the graveyard. No one was there. A light mist hung in the air. I picked up the recorder. The first 30 minutes, wind sounds, gentle rustling of insects, then a deep sigh, and then a woman's voice, weak, trembling, as if coming from a deep, far place. She was crying out, "O Allah, give me the responsibility of making my son a Hafiz of the Qur'an." Hearing this, I shivered. I stayed silent for a few more seconds. Then that same voice whispered, "I didn't die. Someone murdered me." I jumped up from my chair. My blood ran cold. She continued, "The food that was handed to me contained poison. My funeral was rushed. I could have been saved, but no one wanted me to live." I held my head in disbelief. I knew my wife had died at her father's house, and her burial was done in great haste. Because my father-in-law was a respected Islamic elder, and in their house it was customary to bury women quickly. But I had heard from one of the women in that house that 2 hours before Hafiza's death, someone handed Huzaifa a glass of milk to give to her. Now I didn't know whether to cry or go insane. I made a decision. I would find out who that person was, who wanted my wife's soul to suffer, even after she was buried. The next day, I asked Huzaifa, "Son, did you give your mother milk that morning?" He nodded. "Yes, Abu. One auntie told me to give it to her." I asked him, "Do you recognize that auntie?" Huzaifa said, "Yes, Abu. I've seen her a few times at Nanu's house, but I don't know her name." Hafiza wasn't just a wife. She was a Hafiza of the Quran. Now my mind was flooded with thoughts. Could there have been greed for inheritance? Some hidden family conflict? Her father owned significant property. That night, I returned to the graveyard. I turned on the recorder and left it there. Before leaving, I wrote on a piece of paper, "Hafiza, do you want me to know the truth? Should I go forward?" Believe me, the next morning, when I returned and listened to the overnight recording, at exactly 2:10 a.m., a voice spoke again. "Be careful. Don't open my grave out of emotion. Just find out who wanted to harm my child. Who was it that held me captive and tried to erase my son from the world? Even my funeral was staged by them. Allah Akbar." That night, I couldn't sleep. Hafiza's voice still echoes in my ears. "Be careful. Don't open the grave. Let no harm come to my son." Now I understood clearly. Hafiza wasn't the target. Their true aim was to eliminate my son from this world. Now I knew my duty wasn't only to uncover the mystery, but also to protect my son's life. The next morning, I met with a madrasa teacher friend. He had visited my home before and knew Hafiza. I said, "Brother, can you keep Huzaifa with you for a few days? He can spend time with your son?" He thought for a moment and said, "Huzaifa's ability to memorize the Quran is far better than my son's." MashaAllah, he memorizes surahs very quickly. Insha'Allah, I will keep Huzaifa with me. After ensuring my son's safety, I set out to find those cousins of my wife who had given her the milk before her death. My in-laws lived in a part of a rural village. There had been long-standing disputes in their family over small pieces of property. I arrived around noon. As I crossed the alley and entered the house, everything was silent. Suddenly, an elderly woman saw me. She had glasses on her eyes and a tasbih in her hand. She was Hafiza's distant paternal aunt. Seeing me, she stopped. In a soft voice, she said, "You've come? I knew you would. Everyone said you'd give up." I said, "No, he's not the kind to stop." I lowered my head and asked, "Auntie, do you know something?" She nodded slowly and said, "Everyone knows. They're just keeping their mouths shut. When your wife died, it was your sister-in-law and her brother-in-law's wife who brought the milk. But when asked, they said someone else had given it to them. But I'm sure they were the ones who fed it to her." I was shocked. In a heated voice, I asked, "Auntie, didn't you do anything?" She sighed and said, "What could I do, son? I wasn't even invited to the janazah. They buried her quickly, told no one. They said, 'Auntie, you're unwell. Don't trouble yourself.' I knew even then they didn't want you to know. Even I was meant to remain silent." As I stepped out of the house, an old man grabbed my hand and asked, "Are you Hafiza's husband?" I replied, "Yes, why do you ask?" He said, "Your wife came to the market the day before she died. We were having tea at a shop. She was talking loudly on the phone. She was shouting, 'If you wanted, I would have forgiven you, but you're trying to harm my child. I will never forgive you in this life.'" Who would want to harm a woman like Hafiza? But believe me, just 2 days later, I heard she died, at her parents' home. One by one, the pieces began to fall into place. I started to believe. Some of Hafiza's close relatives were not only envious of property, but of Huzaifa's future as well. But is my suspicion really true? Could someone be jealous that my son might become a Hafiz, a scholar of the Quran? Are there really people in this world who envy those who memorize the Quran? I couldn't understand. My head was spinning. I made a vow in my heart. This is no longer just about Hafiza. It is now my fight to protect Huzaifa too. That night, after returning home, I went to the graveyard again. This time I left no question behind. In a soft whisper, I only said, "Hafiza, I now know the truth. If you found peace, give me a sign." I waited for the night to reveal its sign, but the next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. It read, "You've learned too much. Stop now, or no one will come to teach your son the surahs anymore. Because if the child doesn't exist, who will be taught?" Holding the note, I felt like I had turned to stone. This wasn't just a threat, it was a declaration. They knew what I knew. They knew what I intended to do, and they also knew I wouldn't stop. I stayed awake the entire night. Huzaifa was at the home of my madrasa teacher friend. There was only one thought consuming me. Were they now going to strike at my son? The next morning, I received a phone call. My friend's voice trembled with anger and fear. He shouted, "Shams, I've brought your son to the hospital. He suddenly had a terrible headache, began vomiting, and then became very weak." I was hearing the words, but I wasn't understanding them. My chest went cold. My precious son. Before I could speak, his voice came through again. "Huzaifa's condition is now stable, but we ran some blood tests. The doctor said there are signs of a mild poisoning, a substance that weakens the body gradually. But believe me, my friend, we fed him only what we eat ourselves." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Was this a coincidence? Or had something begun against my family? It didn't take me long to reach the hospital. Huzaifa lay on the bed, a saline needle in his hand, his eyes half open. He gave me a faint smile upon seeing me. I placed my hand on his forehead. He whispered, "Abu, I won't be able to go to the madrasa now, right? Ami didn't come today either. How will I learn the surahs?" I burst into tears. Holding him tight, I said, "Don't you worry, my dearest. You will become a Hafiz of the Quran." The doctor approached and said, "It's good you came quickly. The poison wasn't too deep, but this type of poison, if administered continuously, could become deadly." I asked, "How did the poison enter his body?" The doctor replied, "Most likely through food, some kind of chemical. But how or by whom? That's something you or the authorities will have to figure out. That's not for us doctors." Once again, I returned to Hafiza's grave with my recorder. Because suspecting the friend to whom I entrusted Huzaifa would be a great injustice. I've known him since childhood. There is no one more honest or trustworthy. I knew someone else was behind Huzaifa's. I returned to the graveyard. This time, I said nothing. I just sat silently. In my heart, I said, "You were my wife, the mother of my child. You've left me alone, in a maze I can't escape. I can't find a way out." Night had deepened. I was still sitting beside the graveyard. I didn't feel like getting up. It felt as though the knot of mystery would unravel from here. Suddenly, I heard the recitation of Surah Yaseen in Huzaifa's voice. I turned on the recorder and quietly walked away from the grave. The next morning, I replayed the audio that had been recorded throughout the night. At first, just some ambient sounds, leaves rustling. Then, in a soft voice, my wife spoke. "I can't come anymore. Pray for my children. May he hold tightly to Allah's words. There is danger ahead for him. They will return. In Huzaifa's hands lies the light his grandfather left behind in this world. The light of Allah's words. They fear that light." And then, silence. I understood. This wasn't just a family conspiracy. This was a war of hatred against the inheritor of divine knowledge. Huzaifa wasn't just my son. He was the bearer of Nur, conceived in the womb of a Hafiza of the Qur'an. At such a young age, his gentleness, charm, and purity could captivate anyone. Now, I was no longer just a father. I had become a guardian. My battle wasn't just for my wife and child, but for protecting the light of the Qur'an that someone was trying to extinguish with blasphemous intent. Huzaifa's lips were silent, but his eyes held the same tranquility I had once seen in his mother, Hafiza. Now, I had two duties. One, to protect Huzaifa. Two, to find the truth. I called my old friend Nasser. He had once been a journalist, now working as a private intelligence analyst in the CID. His experience was vast, but his ability to stay silent was even greater. I didn't mention any names. I simply said, "A girl has been poisoned to death. Now they're targeting her child. All I know is someone gave her a glass of milk. I need your help." Nasser was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Do one thing. Give me the date of her death, the name of the area, and check if there are any homes or shops nearby with CCTV footage. Maybe the person who brought the milk will be caught on the way." I gave him all the details. 2 days later, Nasser called back. He said, "Friend, you didn't need to say it. I know this is about your wife's death. To be honest, we found a recording on CCTV. A woman brought the milk, and a few hours later, she was seen leaving with a child in a van. Her face was covered with a hijab, but she wore sunglasses over her eyes. It looked suspicious." I told him, "Brother, only you can find out who she is." Nasser said, "I can do it. But the problem is, those who speak their names don't live very long. These people are masters of blasphemous incantations, kufri kalam. I've shown the image of that woman to several people in the area, elders, respected men. They all said the same thing. Don't mess with this. It won't end well. Your weapons are useless against them." I told my friend Nasser, "I'm even ready to die, but no one will dare lay a finger on my son." Seeing my determination, Nasser came to my house that evening. His face was unusually serious. He sat down and said, "Your wife's death wasn't just family enmity. There's an old group behind this. They viewed your father-in-law's religious knowledge, his devotion to Islam and the Quran, as a direct threat. These people work with evil jinn, using black magic and kufri kalam to harm others. But the greatest obstacle to their success was your father-in-law, and later, your wife. She was a Hafiza of the Quran. Her pious voice, her recitation, and her righteous practices became poison to their black magic and evil spirits after your father-in-law passed away. And now, your son carries that light. They want to end the lineage of that light." I was stunned. Truly, I had to admire Nasser's insight. He continued, "You'll be shocked to know, no one has ever stood against them but your wife. Everyone fears them. Police, authorities, even high officials. Because against their power, weapons are useless. Those who confront them don't live long. Even your wife's funeral was controlled by them. They even bought off the khatib. The entire funeral was orchestrated. They had specific instructions: bury her as fast as possible, so that not even an autopsy could happen." My blood froze. Suddenly, I remembered. My wife would often say to our son, "I may not live long, but I want to make you a Hafiz before I die." I asked, "Do you have any proof?" He replied, "Meet me at midnight, behind the old graveyard, in the clubhouse. I'll show you everything. I don't trust anyone, not even myself." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a husband's battle anymore. It was the battle of a child who dreamed of becoming a Hafiz and spreading the word of Allah. It was the battle of a dead woman who still rises from her grave to teach her child supplications. And now, this was the final test of my faith. But am I ready? I don't have Hafiz's strength of faith or practice. With my weak devotion and trembling belief, can I fight these wicked jinn? Can I defeat the forces of kufr and protect my innocent child? 11:45 p.m. I was wearing a white robe, walking toward the clubhouse behind the old graveyard. In my fist was a small pen drive containing childhood videos of Huzaifa and recordings of the supplications Hafiza had once taught me. Because I knew, after tonight, I might be left with nothing. But even if I die, I want to die knowing the truth. The clock struck 12:01 a.m. I stood beside the door. Lights off, door slightly ajar. I slowly pushed it open. A single dim light illuminated the room. On a wooden table, a mobile phone, a file, and behind it, an empty chair. Nasser wasn't there. I looked around, called out, "Nasser? Where are you, brother?" No response. I walked toward the table. The mobile, it was Nasser's. When I unlocked it, the last call was from me. I opened the file. Inside were printed photos, CCTV stills, one woman in sunglasses holding a bottle of milk. Beneath it was written, "Confirm. Subject is." Then just the letter N. The rest had been wiped off. In brackets, "Your wife's cousin's elder sister-in-law." Below that, handwritten in small script, "Hafiza didn't die, she was murdered. The real target was Huzaifa. Hafiza stood in their way, so they removed her." Just then, the light went out. As I turned around, a gust of wind shattered the window pane. From far away, I heard a whisper. Not a language, not a word, but a searing growl, as though someone's breath was against my throat. I reached for the recorder, but my phone was dead. Then I remembered Hafiza's words. When they come, the lights go out. They fear the light of the Quran. I pulled out my copy of Surah Yaseen from my breast pocket and began reciting loudly. Yaseen, wal Quran il Hakim, as though Allah's words became a shield of light around me. The room trembled. The bulb flickered back to life. Under the light, I saw Nazar lying on the floor. I grabbed his hand, no pulse. Held my hand to his nose, no breath. In his clenched fist, a note that read, "The truth I've uncovered doesn't end well. Please, know this. Your son is their final target, because within him lives a sacred light from the Quran, and they fear that light." My lips went dry. I gathered Nasser's phone, the file, everything. This evidence might be my last chance. Now I knew they weren't just erasing my wife. They were erasing my friends too. But in that moment, I could almost see Hafiza's face. Those calm eyes, that motherly voice, that last said to me, "My son is your responsibility now." I made a decision. From today, I will become the shield for Huzaifa. Even if it costs me my life, I will protect my son, inshallah. Because I may have been a failed husband, but I refuse to be a failed father. I am a soldier of the Quran's light. Believe me, those who killed my friend Nasser, their power is such that even a man in a critical government post was erased without a trace. No news in the paper, CCTV footage, gone. Files, burned. Clubhouse, destroyed in a mysterious fire. Police said, electrical short circuit. But I know what happened that night. This wasn't just coincidence. It was the act of an invisible force. I can no longer entrust Huzaifa to anyone. I began to teach him the Quran myself. My pronunciation might not be perfect, but every verse of Tilawah felt like a sword in my hand. Surah Baqarah, Surah Muzammil, Ayatul Kursi. I made him memorize them all. Still, I was restless every night. Then, one night, Huzaifa woke up screaming. "Abu, they came! They said if I read the Quran, they'll erase Ummi forever. She won't ever come back. They told me to stop reading the Quran." I hugged him tightly. My tears fell silently. That night, I made another vow. I will find a scholar who understands jinn, who knows the dark arts of kufr, but who is pure-hearted, not obsessed with worldly things. 3 days later, a friend told me, there is one man. He lives far away in a remote village, hasn't spoken to anyone in 2 years. But when he speaks, it's only to the chosen ones. They say he can block the plans of evil jinn and destroy blasphemous magic. The Quran is his only power. I tracked him down and set off. At the edge of the village, I found a small clay hut. The door was open. Inside sat an old man, his eyes closed, lips moving in dhikr. I greeted him with salam. He said nothing. I sat down. After about 10 minutes, he opened his eyes and said, "There is light in your wife's grave, but her soul is bound." I was startled. He continued, "Your son is their target, because he holds the light that threatens their dark kingdom. Your wife used the healing of Quranic water to extinguish their flames. Now, They've come to reignite that fire." I trembled and said, "What can I do, Shaykh? I'm not a scholar. My faith is weak. I don't know anything." He replied, "Allah loves the brave. You are a father willing to give his life for his child. That is enough." From now on, 11:23 p.m. The Shaykh finished his prayer and walked toward a clear, open patch of earth behind his small house. He said, "This place is invisible to the evil jinn. Inside this earthen circle, no jinn can enter. Because I have placed the silent verses of the Quran here, they cannot cross it." I asked, "Will Huzaifa be safe here?" He shook his head and replied, "No." I asked again, "Will he be safe in my home then?" He again shook his head. "No, you must bring him here, because tomorrow night they will come. To keep Huzaifa safe, you must place him inside this circle. He is no longer just a child. He is the bearer of a Quranic light lineage. They know if this child completes his hifz, his prayers will shake the heavens." I ran without delay to bring Huzaifa. Around 2 a.m., he was asleep with his head on my shoulder. We were now inside the scholar's home. The scholar was building a wall of light based on Quranic verses. Each verse he recited with a specific breath and rhythm. Surah Jinn, Surah Falak, Surah Nas, every verse became a shield. And at the end of this night, we would cloak Huzaifa in that shield. Tears rolled from my eyes. I had never imagined Allah would help me like this, that I would find a warrior who helps others selflessly, standing for truth and justice. He held no worldly weapon, only verses from the Quran, and tears and supplication to the Lord of the worlds. The call to Fajr echoed. The three of us stood together and offered 2 units of prayer. Afterward, the Sheikh told me, "Stay inside with your son today. Before sunset, enter the mud chamber I have prepared. Tonight will be their final attempt. If we defeat them tonight, they will never return." At the start of the day, I went to the mosque and fell into prostration. I raised my hands to my Lord and cried, "O Allah, I seek your protection from the plots of devils and the speech of disbelief. Just as you have preserved the Quran through every generation, protect your Quranic bird, my son, from all harm." As I walked with Huzaifa, a man stopped me and said, "What you are doing is not right. You shouldn't walk into death like this." Perhaps on another day, I might have paused, been afraid, but not this time. Now, I am a friend of death. I do not fear it. I want to embrace it. 10:44 p.m. The Sheikh, Huzaifa, and I were sitting inside the earthen room. Black cloth draped the walls. Every wall was adorned with Ayatul Kursi. The scholar said, "Even if this room catches fire, don't be afraid. Just keep reciting the verses." Suddenly, a deafening roar. A shadow moved outside, as though the very ground was trembling. Huzaifa suddenly stopped breathing and screamed, "Abu, they're taking my voice! I can't recite the Quran!" I cried out, "Sheikh, my son's voice is fading!" The Sheikh calmly said, "They want to silence the Quran's words, but Allah wills to illuminate His light." Then, raising his voice, he asked, "Tell me, where did your wife come to your son from?" I said, "By the window." He went to the window and placed a small Quran booklet there. Then he told Huzaifa, "Child, cry and say, 'O my Lord, make my mother a guest of Jannah. Let her come to me once again.'" Huzaifa, trembling, began whispering, "O Allah, help me. Let my mother come to me." I held him close to my chest. His face was pale, but tears streamed from his eyes. Then it happened. A beam of light hit the window, and a loud recitation echoed. "Nurun ala nur, yahdillahu li nurihi mayyasa." The sheikh shouted, "Alhamdulillah! She has returned!" I didn't understand what was happening, but Huzaifa quietly said, "Ammi, you're here? I'll recite Surah Yaseen now, but this time you can't leave without teaching me Surah Yaseen and Rahman." Tears rolled down my cheeks. I fell at the sheikh's feet. He said, "Not to me. Prostrate to your Lord and thank him. Tonight, they have failed. But remember, their power is not yet gone. Until you face them yourself, they will persist. Now, all their rage is aimed at you, because no one has ever shown them such courage. It is time for you to go alone to your wife's grave. Her soul seeks release. Do not fear. She loves you more than she loved her own life." 3:17 a.m. I set out, alone, toward Hafiza's grave. No one behind me. Only moonlight and silence ahead. Death is now my friend. I no longer fear it. I long to embrace it. Upon my head, the turban the sheikh had tied. In my hand, the Quran. In my chest pocket, Hafiza's chain, the one I never buried with her. For some reason, I had kept it with me that day. Tonight, I came to return it. As I reached the graveyard, my body shivered. Mist, like smoke, hovered around me. I stood beside Hafiza's grave. Believe me, I wasn't afraid in the slightest. I didn't recite any prayer. I just whispered, "Hafiza, today, I bring no questions, no complaints, only one plea. Have you found peace?" Just then, the wind grew stronger, a familiar voice from behind. "You've come? I knew you wouldn't stop." I turned around. No one. Yet that voice echoed in my ears. Yes, I knew that voice. The one I would rush home every day to hear. My wife Hafiza's gentle, loving voice. The voice continued. "You already know. They didn't have any righteous scholar lead my janazah. They feared that if my soul found peace, it would not be good for them. They didn't just remove me. They've done the same to other women too." I sat beside the grave, tears rolling down my cheeks. Then I raised my hands and prayed, "O Allah, grant my wife peace in her grave." Just then, I heard heavy footsteps behind me. I turned on my torch. 4 masked men approached, carrying iron rods and sticks. One of them said, "Tonight, we finish you." I pulled the Quran from my chest pocket and began reciting Ayatul Kursi aloud. With raised hands I cried, "O Lord, I will not retreat. Let me advance with your power." Then I began to recite, "Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Allah guides to his light whom he wills." One of them stepped back. Suddenly the wind stilled. A beam of divine light descended from the sky. The four men staggered, then ran in fear. That light rested upon Hafiza's grave. I fell to my knees in sujud, weeping before my Lord. Then, a tremor in my chest. Hafiza's voice once again, but this time, not pain, not grief, only peace, only love. She said, "See, today you stood for me, with Quranic verses in your hands." I whispered, "You left me, yet returned every night to place the Quran on our son's lips. Why so much love, Hafiza? I'm not even that righteous." Silence. Then she said, "You never understood my love then, but now you understand my love for the Quran. That was my dream. Let that light live within you. And our son, he will raise the torch of Quran in this darkness." I asked, "Will you never return again?" She replied, "Not in this world, but if Allah wills, in Jannah, I will wait for you. I'll wait on that green meadow where rivers flow. When you walk in, reciting Surah Yaseen, I will say, 'Here comes my Shams.'" I closed my eyes. The grave was still. The wind was silent. Yet it felt as if Hafiza was right beside me, holding a flower from paradise. And I whispered, "Hafiza, from now on, I will live for just one dream, our reunion in Jannah."